Hello, friends.
Hello.
Nice to see everybody. We'll give it a few minutes for people to come in.
Hello, Vicky.
Hello.
Hello. I'm just gonna have dinner
Oh,
now.
hello, Jessica.
Bye, Vicky and Mama Liz.
Jessica, hello. Hi.
Good to see
Is
you.
Liz there somewhere hiding?
She's here.
Stephanie.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Hi, Fleur. And Sophie. Sophie. Oh,
And Anne.
Hi.
hello.
Good morning. Oh, good evening for you.
I saw them more there.
It's very early.
I'd say it is.
Morning.
I'm just. Oh, Narissa. Hello, Narissa. Yeah, excellent.
Hello, Xanthe
Hello.
and
Hello. It's so
Liz.
nice to see
Hi,
people.
Marissa.
Donna and
Vicky.
Siggy.
Hi, Narissa. I haven't seen you in a long time.
No, who's that talking?
That's Vicky talking.
Oh, Vicky. Yes, I know. Long story.
Well, you look nice and cozy now.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's turning colder, isn't it?
It certainly is. And we've got hello from Cape Town, hello from the Netherlands, hi from Brighton, Scotland, Northern Ireland, wow, Wisconsin, Canada, Maine, Southampton. And I'm up in Glasgow. And Vicky and Liz are in Ireland,
Happy.
Crawley, Hove actually,
Actually.
Wales, Sheffield, Germany. Wonderful. Well, I suppose we could start doing the housekeeping stuff, couldn't we? But a really warm welcome to everybody. Yes, so we will mute everybody now. We'll probably go on till about 9:15, and then if you did want to stay to the end, then you're free to go at 9:15. Or you're also free to stay on for a chat and to discuss things and to, you know, question things, throw stuff out to the floor. Yeah, I think that's just about it. Have I forgotten anything, Vicky, Liz?
Maybe save the chat till between stories rather than writing when we're telling.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
There's
And
going to be a short break as well, isn't there? So you'll be able to get a cup of tea or whatever.
yeah, we'll go for that around 8:30. Yeah, we're just really excited to see everybody and happy Samhain and Day of the Dead and belated Halloween and Los Angelitos and All Souls Day. Is that right, Liz? Yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to kick straight off with the mistress of storytelling, Liz, who's got the MBE for all her services to community, and we're very, very proud of her to have her to be on her side. She's not on our side, we're on her side, doing amazing things and been running a festival. So, Liz, tell us about all that, and yeah, let's kick off.
Well, I'll tell you a wee bit. Obviously, all week I've been telling ghost stories, all week, from tiny children to nursing homes to adult groups. So it's been in my head all week. I've had the pleasure of having Alton Chang over from West Coast of America, so it's been nice to have somebody beside me to share stories with. But I'm going to start with a story that I've told several times this week, and it's a rather strange story. People always ask, where do you get your stories from? And I was in a school in County Clare, and the principal who'd gone to that school as a pupil started talking about stories. And it turns out the old headmaster, who was known as the master, was a very, very serious man, but he shared this story with them. And because of what we're interested in tonight, I mean, we're talking quite a lot about herbalism and cures and wise women, which is something that interests me, I thought I'd share this story with you. Still, where I live in Ireland, there's a great belief in cures. People will go to ring up to get a cure for ringworm, or a cure for warts or verrucas or shingles. And other people may find this rather strange, but wherever I've been this week, I've asked people about it. And I mean, everybody knows if you get stung with a nettle, you use a docken leaf to take the sting away. So I like this story, and I'm going to share it with you, though it is a bit strange. In County Clare long ago, a new doctor came to work. He had come down from Dublin, and he was up to here with all these people talking about cures and superstitions. He didn't believe a word of it. And he made it clear to all the people in his practice that this was modern medicine. He was going to use modern medicine, and he didn't want to hear anything about this mumbo-jumbo superstitious stuff. But it's the days when doctors still went about by horseback, so it was quite a long time ago. And in the middle of the night, his housekeeper woke him up and said, "Doctor, quickly, come down, your horse is ready. You have to go and see a woman over by Ballard Bridge." And when he came down, sure enough, the horse was saddled. He was fully dressed, a freezing cold night. And as he went to take the horse, she said, "Doctor, be careful. They say there's a witch over there." And he said, "What have I told you about this mumbo-jumbo superstitious nonsense? I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in witches. Woman, go back to bed." And he got on the horse and started off. He had to go through his village, and it was freezing. His hands were freezing on the reins. There was hail coming on his face, and he thought, what I wouldn't give for a hot drink. And as he came out the other side of the village, there was a small cottage with a light on. And the old woman who lived there was said to have cures. She was said to have herbal powers. He always viewed her with a bit of suspicion. But here she was at the door shouting, "Doctor, come in, I've a hot drink ready for you." And to tell you the truth, he was so relieved. He got off the horse, came in, and what had she but a hot whiskey for him? And as he was sipping it, she asked, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going over to Ballard Bridge." And without flinching, she said, "Doctor, you need to be very careful. There's a witch over there." He was just about to open his mouth and criticise her, and he thought, no, she's an old lady, she's been very kind, I'm saying nothing. And she said, "But doctor, I can help you." And she reached into a drawer and she brought out a knife with a black handle. And she said, "Keep this in your pocket. And if you're attacked, stick this into whatever attacks you, but do not pull it out again." He could have said a lot, but he said nothing. He just thanked her for her kindness, got on the horse and headed out the road. It was a lonely country road, and he knew at the crossroads he had to take a right turn and go down over an old stone humpback bridge. And as he approached that bridge, the horse started napping. If you know anything about horses, this horse did not want to go forward. He kicked it on. It was usually a very docile horse, but it was refusing to go onto the bridge. He kicked it and kicked it. And when the first 2 feet went on it, and then the second 2 feet went on it, he felt a thud behind him, behind the saddle. And he heard a rasping breath. Now, he was heart scared. And remembering the old woman's words, he put his hand into his pocket, pulled out the black-handled knife and shoved it into whatever was behind him. And to his horror, he heard a voice say, "Again, again." And he was very tempted to pull the knife out, but he remembered the old woman's words. He did nothing. And when the horse's 4 feet went off the bridge, whatever it was disappeared. Well, he galloped full pelt down to the lane where the sick woman was. And when he went into the yard, the man of the house was out to greet him and said, "Doctor, she's better. She sat up. She's talking." He said, "What?" 10 minutes ago, she's just sat up. And she said, "The doctor needs to be careful." She collapsed again. And she's just sat up again and said, "Everything's all right. And now she's talking. She's taking food." Well, after examining the woman, the doctor decided he wasn't going back home until daylight. So he sat there and he had another drink or two. And the next morning, he got on his horse and he headed back. And as he came back towards the bridge, the horse had no bother going forward. But to his horror, when he got to the side of the bridge, all that was there was a huge blob of black jelly. And sticking out of it was a black duck-handled knife. And that's the story as it was told to me. A fragment of a story, I think. And yet, for any of you interested, the best collection of Irish folklore is on a thing called duchas.ie, www.duchas.ie, where the Folklore Commission got collectors to go out in the 1930s to collect stories. And I have been going on that, it's like a rabbit hole, and I found several stories of this idea of sticking a knife in but not pulling it out. It's called Stick and Don't Withdraw. So I'm hoping the rest of you may do a little investigation on the Duchas site, and I'll be happy to talk a wee bit later on about County Clare and about a woman there who had exceptional healing powers. So thank you for listening.
I think that's an absolutely extraordinary story. Liz, can you say why that's just gripped you of all the stories that you know about?
It's the idea of stick and don't withdraw. I was thinking of, King Arthur and the sword and the stone and all these ideas where you can't get a knife out or a sword out. Just something very strange. Black-handled knives will feature in the next story I'll tell later on. But I just think it's just to sit and have a cup of tea and a sandwich with a teacher in the staff room and to hear a story like that. And I only heard it the once, so I'm just telling it as I heard it to you. I haven't, I've done a wee bit of thinking about it, but that's just straight off. Stories do not have to be complicated to have a bit of a power, and that story has stayed with me. I love horses as well, and I think horses are very intuitive. So that horse knew there was danger before the danger actually struck.
I'm just rather struck by the fact that the blob, this terrifying thing, do it and again, is called a witch, and yet there are witch women that are saying, giving him the advice. It's almost like it's the two sides of the witch.
Yes,
Kind of pull us in.
For some, a witch is a miracle worker. For other, she's, a doer of evil. So it's quite interesting to look at that. And the funny thing, we had a storyteller up with us for the festival last week, Paddy O'Brien, and he's been collecting stories in County Cork. And some of the children told him a story about sticking a knife in about a blob of black jelly. So I just thought it was strange happening the one week where I planned to tell you this story.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think, I always think, as I'm sure we all do, there's the right story for the right time. And it just feels that's the right story for the right time. And Vicky, you're going to tell us through a film that you've done of another story that I was so excited you were going to do for this time of the year. So
Janet's life was one of bodices and boundaries. She would spend her days fumbling with her embroidery and attempting to get a sound out of the lyre. She would watch as suitors came one after the other. They eyed her up for the size of her childbearing hips and her dowry, and then went and spoke to her father. Janet would look beyond the gardens to the wild forest. Shall we go? Have an adventure? But her companion had once been her nursemaid. Oh, no. Nothing there but rogues and trouble. You stay here where it's safe. And then one day, her nursemaid got sick. So sick she took to her bed. Janet let the embroidery slip to the floor and made her way across the room, out down the corridor, through the gardens. And she was free in the wild. Janet drank it in. The way the light filtered through the trees, the smell of the flowers. She found a babbling brook and drank from the spring. And it was sweet and it was fresh. And then she heard music. Janet followed the sound of the music all the way to a glade where there was a strange stone structure, like a doorway to another world. Sitting at the bottom was a young man. He was playing music, beautiful music. She found herself drawn towards him. He had dark hair and dark eyes. When he looked up at her, he stopped playing. "What's a girl like you doing alone in a place like this, trespassing?" She said. "I'm not trespassing. You're trespassing. This land belongs to my father." I know someone that would disagree with that. He stood up. She noticed he was wearing strange clothes, like something her grandfather's father would have worn. He said, "But seriously, are you alone, unchaperoned?" "What of it?" She sat down. on a branch and kind of bobbed up and down. He sat down next to her and they kind of bobbed together. How times have changed. Would you like a song? Oh yes, please. I mean, play if you like. As we played a song so soft, like a caress, so passionate, like a kiss. And when he was done, she looked into those dark eyes. Who are you? Would you believe me if I told you I was a fairy? No. If you were a fairy, I would already be lost. Are you not lost, Janet? He took her by the sleeve. He took her by the hand. And together they made their way through the forest, discovering his world together, hand in hand. She came back day after day after day. He told her his name was Tam Lin, and that once upon a time he had lived in that very house she now called home. But he had come out into the wild forest and he had met someone there, a woman who he had become smitten with. That woman turned out to be a fairy queen. She had taken him through the gate to the other side, where he had found such joy and bliss that he had stayed. Until one day he wanted to come home to his family. He left, and when he did, he found they were gone. Time had moved on. Without him, he had nowhere to go, so he had returned to her. What's she like, the fairy queen? Oh, she is magnificent. When she looks upon you, it is like the sun is shining just for you. And when she looks away, will you take me to meet her? Will you take me through? Oh, Janet, no. The fairy queen, she takes more than she gives. No, you stay here where it's safe. Oh, I'm sick and tired of people telling me to stay safe. Janet, you are so beautiful, so human and vulnerable. She would take that from you. You see, when you meet the fairy queen, from that moment on you belong to her. Janet didn't ask if he belonged to the fairy queen. She just kissed him. And there in that glade they came together in passion and in ecstasy. Janet couldn't wipe the smile from her face all night long. She was thinking about him, but in the morning her nurse returned to her post and Janet couldn't get away. Not for another week was she able to go back into the forest, at which point she couldn't find him. He was gone. And no matter how many times she returned over the summer, she never saw him again. The leaves turned golden and brown and dropped from the trees, and her bodices had to be loosened as her tummy swelled, and her mother noticed. Tell me at least that this is the work of a gentleman. I can't. You have brought shame upon us all. Get out of my sight. And so Janet was banished to her bedroom where her brother found her. You got yourself into this mess. You deal with it. You know what I mean. Janet did know what he meant, but she didn't know how, so she went to see her nursemaid. Oh, no, that's wicked. I'll have no part of it. Please, I'm desperate. And so her nursemaid told her what to look for and where to find it. Janet found the plant she was looking for and plucked it. And then she heard a sound behind her. She turned and there was her Tam Lin. Janet, why would you hurt the child we got together? Because you abandoned me. What else am I supposed to do? Oh, Janet, I'm so sorry. You're right. Go. Do what you must do. Forget about me. And he turned to leave and go back through the fairy gate. She pulled on him. She pulled his arm, and that is when she saw the red rings around his eyes, the red worms down his arms. What has happened to you? Oh, Janet, the fairy queen. She found out about you, and she's angry with me. She's going to make a sacrifice of me. On the night that the veil thins between our worlds, she will bring me through. Oh, Janet, it is best that you forget about me. Go live your life. Do what you must do. And then he disappeared through the fairy gate. And Janet took her plant and she returned home. She made the tea. She had it in the cup, but she couldn't drink it. On the night that the veil thinned on Samhain, Janet put her cloak around her and she returned to that fairy gate. And she hid herself in the thicket and she waited until they came. They came on horses chestnut brown, robes of ruby red and eyes like fire. They came on horses black as night, robes of sapphire blue and eyes like forest ferns. They came on horses white as snow, robes of gold and eyes like diamonds. And there she was, the fairy queen, magnificent and terrifying. And at her side, slumped over his own white horse, was Janet's Tam Lin. She didn't stop to think. She ran across that glade. She grabbed her man and she pulled him to the ground. And then he changed all in her arms into a wild wolf, snarling, growling, wriggling, writhing. She held him tight and feared him not. He was her one true love. And then he changed all in her arms into a wild bear. His back lengthened and broadened, his nose became a snout. She held him tight and feared him not. He was her husband dear. And then he changed all in her arms into a lion bold. His hair became a mane, his teeth sharp tore into her arm, drawing blood. The pain was real. She held him tight and feared him not. He was the father of her child. And then he changed all in her arms into a naked man. She wrapped her cloak around him close and took him home. When Janet came through the gates of the house, she saw her parents watching from the upstairs window. They opened the doors. They brought Tam Lin into their home. Her mother made the beds, her father made the fire, and they took it in turns, even her brother, to sit with him night after night as he, slowly but surely, came back to himself and came back to Janet. And when he did, he put his arms around her and the wee bairn, and they started their life together.
I have to say, I really like the dog in your film. We love the dog, and we love your version of Tam Lin. Before I ask you a couple of questions, anything that's leaping out to you, Liz, after listening to that wonderful telling?
I love Vicky's telling. She takes stories that we know and she makes them her own. I absolutely love that, and I love the idea of, she pulls him to the earth. A lot of this is about, touching base with the earth. He's left the fairy world and he's back to our human world again. And I love that in stories, when you return to the earth. Vicky just reminded me earlier about the story I tell, the Rathlen story, where the boy comes back from the fairy world because he's got a thorn under his finger, and that connects him to our world. So now Tamlin's back on earth. I love that.
Yeah, what I really loved was your ending, which, you really talked about that need to come back to earth, but you had a special spin on it there, didn't you, Vicky, really? Your interpretation of the ending of Tam Lin.
Yeah, I don't know how many other people have done that, where she brings him home, and I just thought about that coming home moment, because to me, when I came to this story, what I saw was addiction, and it's quite obvious that that's what I put on it, but the sort of bringing him home and the fact that they all come round to bring him back and to bring him through and support, because that's what it takes, doesn't it? Like, we all have to rally round, and that warmth from the fire and everybody supporting her. You don't always see that in older stories about young girls that run off with fairy boys. So I thought it was nice to just have that when she brought him home, what home means. It means we're all there together supporting and getting through for the child.
It makes me think as well, I mean, it's because addiction, you can be addicted to so many things, you can be addicted to ambition and sex and drugs. And that line, the way you did it, what did you say? once you've looked into her face, you don't want to look anywhere else again. What did you say?
I think in this it does change sometimes, but it's when she looks upon you, it's like the sun shines only for you, and when she looks away, and then I just left it actually, but in this version, but when she looks away, you know, it's like that's gone, and that's all you look for again. And this idea of that she takes more than she gives, was the other thing that I always slip in there, because I feel like when he goes through there and you're in that, whenever you go to the fairy stories and you go into the other world, and everything's dripping with fruit, and it's always summer, and it's always beautiful. To me, it's this idea of some sort of bliss or realm of joy and happiness. And to come back from that must be pretty hard. And the idea of going through into that and then coming back, now in all the stories, when you come back, everything's moved on and it's all gone and it's turned to dust. And maybe that's just a perception thing, that once we've been there, we can't come back, or it's very hard unless we go down to earth.
Yeah, it's the idea about it being, you being seduced by it, you know, and then the return.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting avenue to explore with these stories.
I can't help thinking that it does make me think also about which we're going to talk a bit about later. This is the Goddess Lounge, and we talk about the split of women, and this idea that you want women to be always permanently in summer and spring and beautiful, and that's acceptable. We forget the whole, which is the other side, which is the getting older, the maybe not. It's a bit like wanting always the same fruit in the supermarket, not thinking that it's seasonal and that the seasons are beautiful. And so there's something about that, and the thorn underneath the nail, that we've lost our reality, or the ordinary progression of life hasn't been enough as we've moved away from the land. And I think a load of people are, hence people wanting to come to these kind of events to celebrate the changes of the year. The other thing I was struck with was the fact that there is an abortive herb there, and in the version I know, it's the mother that gives the herb, and I like that the mother in your version kind of comes back and is redeemed by being nurturing again. You had it as the brother, but it's I'm just going to show a little film in a minute about herbs and their dosages. And so the herbs that are abortive can be very helpful to expel a fetus or to help childbirth, or they can be used to abort a child, which can be good, because sometimes you need the choice to be able to not have a child if it's not appropriate. So there's so much there in that story of Tamlin. But I will just share this other film talking a little bit about herbs that have gone out of fashion a bit.
We're at the turning time of the year, and that always reminds me of spiralling Hecate. She's the mother of the spinning fates, sometimes called the Weird Sisters. Weird as in meaning to turn or become. Hecate is like a snake, difficult to get hold of, killing, curing, twisting, breaking, reattaching that thread of life. Snake venom has been used in medicine for years, just like Hecate's poisonous herbs. The nightshades, datura, henbane and belladonna, help heal many conditions from asthma to Parkinson's. They also contain tropane alkaloids, hyoscyamine, scopolamine and atropine. These tropane alkaloids inhibit the neurotransmitter responsible for our sense of togetherness, linear reality, who we think we are. Tropane, like weird, means to turn. Prized as anesthetics and aphrodisiacs, the nightshades get us into a spinning wheel trance. A modest amount can turn us towards the light. An overdose can make us feel as if we're werewolves, as hairs crawl out of our paws, our fingers turn to claws. Maybe the origin of Hecate's black dogs.
Do you find when you're doing it that you go into a bit of a trance?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't normally talk. I just sit here and spin. And I like the sort of swishy sound it makes. And the lanolin feels very nice on your hands. And yeah, it's a very contemplative thing to do.
You could see Hecato's fates in the light of her herbs. Clotho spins the thread, pulling it from darkness into light. Her herb is Datura stramonia, which causes introspection and revelation. One name is thorn apple, hiding those black seeds. Another angel flower with those white trumpets. Datura can alter consciousness to remove the concept of time, just like Hecate's spinning wheel that unites past, present and future. Lachesis weaves the thread, makes the pattern of life. She is henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, used for partying and insomnia. Life is sunshine, death is sleep. Beloved of the sun god Apollo, henbane was taken by the priestesses of Delphi so that they could see into our pattern of life, how it would evolve. Atropos cuts that thread. Atropa belladonna is her herb. Those glistening black, luxurious berries are called the devil's cherries. Atropine treats the eyes, and death is a great focus.
When it suddenly goes very thin, you would break it and reattach.
The Bacchants took belladonna and created orgiastic connection with each other and nature.
And do you actually make things from the thread that you spin?
I do, yes. I've knitted a green man balaclava with some of it. Would you like to see that?
I would, definitely.
And we have the instant green man.
I would say that that is a henbane.
Oh, would you?
Yeah, because it's got the similar colours of henbane, which is the merrymaking, mead making. We used to make mead and beer from henbane and meadowsweet, which made you much more jolly than hops.
And who doesn't want to be more jolly?
Well, that's thanks to Dietz Verschunen for on the spinning wheel there. But yeah, this is called The Witches and Werewolves. The Wonders and Werewolves of the Witches' Cabinet. And I am a great lover of Hecate, and she's often followed around by black dogs, as we'll see in a story later. And I love black Labradors. Don't know if there's anybody else out there that loves a black Labrador. And I see them as devoted dogs because she's a very faithful goddess, and she's also got no ego. A lot of the goddesses, they're kind of like, look at me, she doesn't seem to care whether she's in a myth, and you could take her or leave her. She's like the earth. She'll carry on doing her thing. And I think, Labradors are a bit like that. They're just there for you. She's a midwife. She's the goddess of children. She's fire, and she inspires this incredible love in her devotees. And yet, as far as patriarchy concerned, she got labelled as a witch because she was too powerful. She was seen as riding between the fathers, basically like the fiery spirit. And she had love flowing out of her hips and all-ensouling light. She was really powerful. And then she gets downgraded to a witch, where black dogs, will tear you apart if you come and take the sacrifices left to her at the crossroads. And it just feels like the same thing that's happened to goddesses and women and witches through time is exemplified all in that story. That, if someone gets too powerful, too strong, the herbs are... they're in the hands of the women generally, and they can kill or they can cure, and that's just too much. So I'm getting a bit militant here, but I think it's okay on a witch night like tonight. So and then the other thing, that thing about addiction being like so if you take too much of anything, too much of a goddess, too much of a herb, you become addicted, and it pushes over into the negative. Have I just repeated myself? Any thoughts, Vicky, Liz? Help me out here.
I think it's really interesting, this connection with the kind of hallucinogenic herbs and what they can create.
played against the kind of idea that the women were in charge, but that was a power that if you don't understand it, it then goes wrong and it becomes quite horrific. And that fear maybe moves over into the fear of this sort of witchcraft and sort of what it can do, and that the sort of misunderstanding of that by people that didn't know what they were doing necessarily and wanting to take maybe that power. I don't know, or maybe making connections that aren't there. But I do find that very interesting, especially the one about the turning into the werewolf. And so many of these stories have that transformation aspect, like the Tamlin as well. And perhaps that there was something more that actually really did come to it. It's not just a metaphor through the herbs.
Yeah. Liz, you're on mute.
I used to think my mother was a woman ahead of her time, because she was quite shocking sometimes, because she said things like, women knew what to take. And I go, like, you mean, and she'd say, and I go, oh. So women did know always what to take, if they wanted to prevent something or wanted to bring something on. It's quite interesting. I remember being shocked by that with my own, I thought, very conservative mother. So there you are. She grew up in the south of England. She wasn't Irish either, so we never heard anything about Irish cures and that sort of thing. But we heard from her, Interesting.
I love that. That's very Hecate, that silent quality and the secrecy and the necessity of secrecy, because these things are dangerous. You don't blab around about them. I think that's so clear in your next story, Vicky. So
Harebell loved the wild places. She lived on an island with her sister Primrose in a beautiful cottage at the end of a lane. And behind the cottage there was a perfectly preened garden, and behind that was a wild place. And at the edge of that wild place, just before the earth gave way to cliffs and the sea below, there was an ash tree. And Harebell loved to sit under that ash tree. Unfortunately for Harebell, every week, once a week, her sister Primrose insisted that she come with her to the market. Harebell hated the market, all those people. So she would find herself a place right at the edge, in a corner, and she would sit and watch as Primrose went about the business of exchanging this for that and getting their weekly goods. Now, on this particular day, Harebell was sitting at the edge of the market when she noticed an old woman sat on the other side of the market, also in a dark spot, sort of sitting apart from the crowd, and she thought she found a kindred spirit, so she sort of smiled and nodded, and the old woman winked at her. And then the strange thing happened. A man came up to the old woman, and the old woman reached into her pocket and brought out a little vial of something and gave it to him. But that wasn't the extraordinary thing. The extraordinary thing was that his face had been all pinched with worry and pain. But when he took that vial, it changed to one of smiles and joy. Harebell thought that was some kind of magic, and it kept on happening. Every person that came to this old woman would go away with an expression of happiness and joy, where before there had been worry or frustration or even anger. When Primrose came back, Harebell asked her, "Who is that woman?" That's the Cailleach. The who? The Cailleach. She goes here, she goes there, she goes everywhere. She's as old as the hills, as wise as the moon. The Cailleach. Oh, she's magic. Well, there's no such thing as magic. Harebell believed in magic. And what she saw that day in the market looked like magic to her, changing one thing into another. She noticed, though, that although the Cailleach kept giving and giving and giving, nobody gave her anything back. So she took an apple from the basket and she took it over to the Cailleach and she gave it to her. The Cailleach took it. She said, "You're a good girl. Here, I'm going to give you something." And she reached into her pocket and she brought out a beautiful, smooth stone. And she gave it to Harebell. She said, "You take this home and you put this in that ash tree of yours for me. Can you do that?" Harebell had no idea how she knew about her ash tree, but she promised that she would. And then she put it in her pocket, and she didn't tell Primrose about it all the way home. She was convinced that this was a magic stone and something amazing was going to happen. When she took it out at home, she went straight to the ash tree. She put it into the ash tree and she waited. And nothing happened, nothing at all. She was very disappointed. Next week she went back to the market, but the Cailleach wasn't there, or the week after, or the week after that. Not until the 4th week did the Cailleach return. And it was the same old story. People came up, she gave, they went on their way happy. This kept on happening in a pattern once every 4 weeks, until one day into the market square came a man with a stuck-up nose, looking very self-important in fine clothes. He called for the attention of everybody there, and the soldiers who were with him pointed their guns, which were very convincing. Everybody went silent to hear this man speak. "I am Lord Pompadouc. I have been gifted this island from the king. You now are all my tenants. You must come forward, register your name and your address, and pay me the tax to live on my land." Well, once again, those guns were quite convincing. People lined up, they gave their name, they gave their address, and then they gave whatever they had, a little gold, a little silver, maybe some coins, maybe something like bread or vegetables, whatever they could give. At last it was Primrose's turn. Primrose came up. She said, "I don't have anything." Lord Pompadouc looked her up and down. "You can give me that honey, but this is all we have to eat all week." "Well, you'll just have to make more next time, won't you?" And so he took the honey. Eventually everyone had gone and registered with Lord Pompadouc except the Cailleach. At this point, the chief of the soldiers marched over to her and said, You will come and register and pay your tax." The Cailleach stood up, and Harebell was amazed because she looked so small and frail sitting in that corner, but when she stood up, she was as tall as him and as broad and as strong. She looked him right in the eye. She said, "I do not live on this island. I'm just passing through. I do not need to pay your tax." The chief said, "Well, there is a tax to come to the market and trade. You will pay that tax." The Cailleach looked him in the eye and said, "I'm not trading anything. I am simply giving. Nobody pays me. Therefore, I do not need to pay your tax. However, I will give something." And she reached into her pocket and she pulled out a vial. She didn't give it to the chief and she didn't give it to the Lord Pompadouc. She noticed a soldier who was scratching. She went over to him and she said, "This'll help." And she gave it to him. And neither the Lord or the chief wanted to make too much of a scene. It had been a pretty good day for them, so they let it go. And 4 weeks later they let it go again, and 4 weeks later they let it go again. But 4 weeks after that, Lord Pompadouc came into the market square with a priest. The Cailleach stood up. She came across the market square. She reached into her pocket and she gave the priest, or offered him, a vial. The priest said, "I will have none of that witchcraft." The minute the word was out of his mouth, the guns all pointed at the Cailleach. The Lord Pompadouc ordered the chief soldier to put her in shackles, and iron shackles were put around her wrists. Once that word had been released, witch, it went around the market square, and Harebell saw everybody turn to stare. And Lord Pompadouc turned to them all there and then and said, "Tomorrow she will be judged." Well, Harebell did not sleep that night. She came back to the market square the next day, and they had put a noose in the centre of the square. They brought the Cailleach out. Lord Pompadouc spoke to everybody there. He started talking about all sorts of crimes and terrible things he was saying that she had done. Harebell waited. She waited for the people there to speak up for the Cailleach, to say it wasn't true. Eventually, a man stepped forward and said, "The Cailleach gave me some ointment for my knees, and the knees got better, but last week my cow died." As though those two things were connected. And then another woman came forward and said, "The Cailleach gave me something for my heart, And although I feel so much more in love with my husband now than I have for many, many years, he's covered in pimples from his head to his toe. And it went on and on and on like this. Every little ill, every little problem was laid at the Calyac's feet. Until finally the Lord Mayor turned to all of them, Lord Pompaduke, and said, "I have heard enough. What will you have me do?" And they started to shout back at him, "Kill her, burn her, drown her, hang her." He said, "Very well. This woman is a witch. Bring her forth." And they started to bring the Calyac forth. At this point, Harebell could bear it no longer. She ran out in front of the Calyac, said, "Stop! This is wrong. This woman has done nothing but give. You cannot accuse her of such a crime." But the Calyac looked at Harebell and said, "Dear, don't you worry. They can't kill the Calyac, although they might try." She was then put into the noose. The stool was taken from under her feet and she was hanging there, but she did not die. She just whistled and smiled until a few days later they had to take her down. The next day they took her out on a boat. They tied rocks around her and they pushed her into the sea. They waited for hours and then one person dove down under the water and there she was, just sort of smiling at them, blowing bubbles. So they brought her back up and took her back to the dungeon. The next day they took her into the market square again and they put a pyre with all sorts of branches and kindling and they set fire to it and they had her attached to that pyre and they waited until the flames were licking at her, but she did not scream, did not utter a cry. Those flames hardly touched her at all. The Calyac did not die. Finally, Harebell was able to sleep again, knowing that the Calyac was not going to die for crimes she did not commit. But the next day she heard shouting outside and she came outside and saw that all her neighbours were running around and there were soldiers everywhere going from around the trees. She said, "What's going on?" And one of her neighbours told her, "Turns out the reason the Calyac can't die is because her heart is hidden in a tree. They're going to search all the trees until they find it. They'll burn them all down," they said, "if they have to." Well, Harebell knew which tree the Calyac's heart was in. She took her axe, she went out to the ash tree in the garden and she stood guard until finally they came. And when they came, she stood between the soldiers and the Calyac's heart, but she was just a child. It was easy for them to pull her away. The chief soldier took his axe and he brought it down against the ash and it bounced out of his hand and hit one of the soldiers on the head. At which point he knew this was the tree. He ordered them to bring branches and kindling and set fire. And as the fire started to burn at the ash tree, they heard screams, not coming from the tree, coming from the village. Harebell wriggled away, ran up to the top of the roof, Primrose right behind her, and they looked out over the village and they saw that Lord Pompaduke's castle that he'd built himself was on fire. And so were the homes of all the soldiers, and so were the homes of all the people that had spoken against her. When she came back to the garden, she found the chief soldier on his knees, staring at that ash tree without a flame or a flicker around it, not even one mark on that beautiful ash tree. And when they returned to the dungeon to find the Calyac, she was gone. She didn't return. Not 4 weeks later or 4 weeks after that or 4 weeks after that, not for a year and a day. By which time Lord Pompaduke had moved on, as had the soldiers, and so she went on like she had before, giving her little vials and potions and whispers to people that needed them, and never, ever asking for anything in return.
Wow. We love that story. But while it's still fresh in our minds, so much to talk about there. Vicky, tell us about your inspiration for that story, where you set it in your imagination. Take us away.
So that story came to be through following my interest in the tales of the trees, which I've been doing a little bit of lately. And it started with the ash tree. And when I went to Dukas, which Liz has talked about before, I found stories of ash trees that burned. And when they burned, other things burned. The person that tried to burn them might burn, or something of theirs might burn. So that's where that first idea came from. And then there's a story of the heart being in the tree. It's a story, King O'Hara's daughter's
Yes.
lovely story.
Catherine, her greyhound husband. I love it.
That's the one. And I just love this idea of, when I tell it, I always think about that the other people, the fairies, have, the Queen of the Fairies puts her heart into the tree because it's her connection with the land. And then the kayak has that connection with the land, and the goddess has that connection with the land. And to me, the kayak is always kind of a wise woman figure, as well as being a goddess. Like she travels here and there, and takes the form of an older lady. She's very associated with the winter goddess, and in some of the old stories, the kayak has the cattle and she moves around a lot. So this all pulling on different threads. There's a place that I live very close to called Island McGee, and every morning when I walk my dog, I can see it, and it's quite an inspiration for me. And for some reason that I can't really explain, I've always kind of connected, whenever I tell a story of the kayak, her to that place, and I'm not really sure why, other than it's a very ancient place and it has a connection of witches. There is a local event that happened in 1711 that was a mass witch trial. And there are lots of stories about witches around Island McGee. So all those things coming together kind of was the inspiration for this story.
I mean, I love what you were telling me about the Isle of McGee, and you were saying that there weren't many witches burnt in Ireland or, killed compared to Scotland and England. But tell us about that one witch trial that's so important on the Isle of McGee.
Okay, so yes, a fraction of witch trials in Ireland, maybe a handful, 5-ish, that we know about, over from the 1300s to 1711, which was when this one was, which was the last one. Not the last, nearly one of the last ones. Anyway, it's the only mass witch trial that we know of in Ireland, and it was on Island McGee in a Scots Presbyterian community, and it involved a young girl not from Island McGee who came and accused, over the course of about 3 or 4 weeks, 9 people in the local community, 8 women and 1 man, of bewitching her. And this whole event took over the whole of Island McGee. Like, everybody was involved. People, I believe, the more I look into it, that people knew the stories, they knew the folklore, and more things kept happening to this young girl that just ticked every box of bewitchment. From the fits and her having her tongue curled down the back of her throat, to people seeing little demons and things disappearing, witches' knots being found everywhere, all the way through, as it went on, to her coughing up pins and feathers, and eventually, after the trial, passing away. So this is a story that I've been telling recently, and it's very much connected with Island McGee, but it very much interests me from the idea of the fact that the folklore, if you look into it, in Ireland, where there weren't very many witch trials, mainly witches stole some butter from the cows, turned into hares, did little things like that. In Scotland, where there were more witch trials, the witches, and Germany, which was the most witch trials, witches ate children in the folklore in Germany. It was a very, very different story that we were telling if you like. And I wonder if that is connected, and that we have to kind of think about what stories we're telling and how that can play out in the real world.
Well, and also something you said as well about people didn't necessarily die, but you said they were put in the stocks.
Yeah, so there's when I came to the story of the Isla McGee witch trial, like the first thing was that the punishment for them was a year and a day in jail and 4 appearances in the stocks on market day for 6 hours at a time. So they weren't burned and they weren't hanged and they weren't killed. And I think when I first came to that, my thought was, oh, well, that's okay. But it wasn't okay. Their lives were destroyed, completely destroyed. The brutality of those appearances in the stocks was horrendous. One of them lost an eye. And I think that just an accusation that maybe didn't even go to a trial, but just an accusation within a community was enough to absolutely destroy a person's life.
This is what we're seeing now. We're seeing it now. Mass hysteria. We're seeing it around us in our society. So we should be learning from history, but we don't. But this was a very particular thing. I mean, I grew up listening to the stories of the Isla McGee witch trials. Vicky does a marvellous set on it. It's fantastic. So I think it was great that you were inspired then to create your own story, and then you have all that backstory, really. The accusation of being a witch and the accusation about what you were talking about being the other, somebody who's different, somebody who's a wee bit eccentric, I'm considered really eccentric here, I have to tell you, but the older I get, the more I empathise with these women. I'm turning into the crone now at this stage of my life. Anyway.
Well, they're all like predominantly, not completely, but over a certain age, over 40. 80% of the witch trials were women over a certain age. And in the Isla McGee example, when it went to trial and they scratched away, it came down to the ill fame. But when they scratched away at that, what one observer pointed out was that was really about their ill looks. One of them had arthritic hands, one of them was lame of foot, one of them had a swarthy face and thick lips, and all these details were put into what came out, and this was pretty much what they were tried on. This idea of the outward manifestation of the inner evil or whatever, which is horrendous.
Yeah, it's all the kind of dualistic thinking, isn't it? It takes us back to the black blob, actually, doesn't it, Liz? It's very much seeing it as one thing. I know that James VI, James I, Scotland and England, he wrote a book called Demonology about witches and demons. And there's just a horrific story. But what I find really horrific was he's the King James of the King James's Bible, So we start off with that. But apparently there was a woman called Agnes Sampson who was a brilliant healer, and people thought she was a bit weird because she would hang toads upside down and get the venom, because the venom is good as a heart tonic and a healer and a pain reliever, just like snake venom can be curing of cancers. But nobody really got in her way because she was just superb at curing people, until the king was about to get married to Queen Anne of Denmark, and she was coming over on a ship to get married to him, and it was blown off course in a storm, and it went to Norway, and King James decided to go and meet her. But then when he met her, the ships again, she had 18 ships, one of them was sunk. So there was a big investigation in Denmark of this guy called Peder Munk, who had made the ships. And he said, oh no, it wasn't me, that it was the witches that caused the storm. So over in Denmark, 5 women were tried and tortured and killed and accused of going out into the sea and causing this storm. They apparently raised imps and demons and wrecked the ship. So King James then got the idea that this was really useful. He was going to start blaming women. So one of the first things he did was to pull in Agnes Sampson, and there's transcriptions of the trials, and she was so dignified. And for an hour, she just said, no, it's not that. And I've got the toad hanging, because, she tried to explain all of her practices. And Then she was, hanged, and she still sort of didn't confess. And finally, under torture, she actually confessed all kinds of ludicrous things. She said that the toad venom was going to be smeared over the bed of the king, and because of that, he would be punctured with needles and eventually die. But the thing that really, really got me, and the reason that I got into this story, was I was interested in this song that goes, "Come a go ye before, come a go ye. If you will na go before, come a let me. A ring a widdershins, a looping lightly widdershins. Come a carlin, crone and creen, a what round go we." And come a is woman, carlin is hag from the Old Norse and the Gaelic, and then queen, so it's talking about the 3 stages of life. And in the trial, she said, "Well, okay, all right, I did. I tied bits of a dead body to a cat's limbs, and me and my friend Gaelis Duncan, we went to the church, and the devil was put over the pulpit, and we all had to kiss his backside and pay allegiance to him. And then we all went out and got drunk. We rode in sieves on the ocean, singing this song, 'Come a go ye before, come a go ye.'" And apparently King James really, really liked this song, and he was kind of quite titillated by it. And finally, they were all, burned, hanged, 4,000, killings later. And he writes his book of demonology. Shakespeare is inspired by these transcripts for his 3 witches. But the most heartbreaking thing is that we still have that song. That song is, I found this whole story from looking at Blackthorne Morris, who had done this song. And I thought, oh, that's fantastic, but I probably can't use it because it's probably theirs. And I spoke to Kate Daisy Grant, who's been on the Goddess Lounge, and she said, "Oh, no, I think it's traditional." So then I started looking. That song from 1590 has lasted, and it's a bit like the Cailleach, the strength, because one of the verses, and this is what is so heartbreaking, is, "Come a go ye before, come a go ye. If you will na go before, come a let me. A ring a widdershins, a whirling skirling widdershins," which is kind of screaming widdershins, on a night like tonight. "Deal tack the hindmost where'er she be." And of course, if you think of women dancing together in a circle, there is no hindmost. You're all together. We're all dancing in a circle. So the devil can't take us. But the irony was that fabulous friendship between her and Gaelis Duncan was broken, and the camaraderie of women and healers was broken. But was it, they're like the Cailleach, they come back. So, sorry, that was a bit of a rant yet again, but we're going to take a break now for probably about 7 minutes and then come back to more of Liz telling us about the fabulous healer, Biddy Early. So see you 43-ish, 44. 2044. See you there. That's so interesting, Erin, about the thorn apples being called Jimson weed. I've read that, and you recognise them.
If we're still on break, I can say that I used to do a lot of herbal plants and stuff, and a friend of mine wanted me to identify a plant in her yard, and I knew immediately through my body and instinctually this was not a plant you would want to taste. But what I didn't understand is you would also not want to smell it. So I had cut it open and taken a very, like maybe this far away from me, sniff, and I immediately got very dizzy, and I put it down and I said, "We need to identify it before we do anything else." But the plant is so unusual looking that was my first clue. This when a plant is that unusual looking, it usually has some kind of big properties that you want to be very careful of. Anyway, thank you for noticing that.
No, that is really, really interesting. Yeah, extraordinary. I know that in the tinctures, if you make a tincture, normally it would be like 1 part of herb to maybe 1 to 4 parts of alcohol, but if you're using any of those, it's at least 1 in 10. You've got to water it down so much. But most of us haven't even seen them because they've been banned, and maybe that is connected with the witch trials, because of course, after the witch trials and all the burnings, it was then said that there's actually no magic, nothing is magic, plants aren't magic, nothing's magic. So it was suppressed, herbal medicine and stuff was suppressed in another way because you didn't dare say that a plant had magic qualities or, was that powerful. Anyway, Liz,
Here I am.
Hooray!
Hello. Well, I'm going to talk a wee bit about healing and cures. As an exercise this past week, I think I mentioned it earlier on perhaps, when I had an audience and I was telling them ghost stories, I was talking about superstitions. As you know, in Ireland we have many strange creatures like the banshee and the lananshee, these fairy women, and strange creatures like the puka, a fairy horse. But I was asking people about herbs and cures. And almost everybody in every audience, there was people who could tell me, oh, the cure for this, cure for whooping cough, pass the child under a donkey, cure for mumps, put a donkey's halter in somebody and lead them around a field. All of these sort of things. One of our storytellers got led astray last Saturday night when he went out for a walk, and I said to him, really, Doogie, all you had to do was take your jacket off, turn it inside out and put it on again, and you'd have been brought home safely. So people in Ireland believe in these things. And I suppose as a teenager, about 1967, I first met a lady called Mrs. Adams. She was my then boyfriend, then husband, now ex-husband's grandmother. And she was a lady, she was probably the same age as me, 75 or thereabouts at that time. And she had all sorts of cures. I mean, she had cures for really difficult things like burns. I mean, who would take somebody who had a cure for burn? But she could cure burns, she could cure verrucas. Now, she was a very Christian woman, and she believed this was a gift given from God. So she wouldn't take money for any of these cures. But as I say, the house was coming down with like wee boxes of triangular handkerchiefs that people used to favour in those days, or a box of chocolates or pictures and so on. But the problem with her cures, they had to be passed on to a male member of the family. It went female, male, female, and none of the men in her family would have anything to do with it. So all her cures died with her, and I always thought that was really sad, because I'm sure my daughter would have been really interested in it being passed along to her. So that sort of started my interest. Then over 30 years ago, I met the wonderful Eddie Linehan. Eddie and I are around the same age, and I first heard about Biddy Early, the wise woman of Clare. I used to take a house every year in County Clare. I love Clare. My daughter's name is Clare. And Eddie came and told me about Biddy, and I've grown up sort of as a storyteller, realising that this woman had special cures. The real Biddy Early was born 1798 in County Clare, and she grew up very impoverished, but it became obvious that she had a gift for healing, which is why some people said she was a miracle worker. The church said she was a witch, but there's total agreement she was a herbalist. She used herbs and cures. And a strange other connection happened to me last night on my session when Lona Bartlett from North Carolina, and Erin will have heard this, she showed me her bottle tree outside her house with these blue bottles, which they have in North Carolina. They say that the good people, the evil fairies get trapped in those. But Biddy Early had a blue bottle, which apparently was the centre of her strength. People said it had been given to her by the fairies, and after she died, it disappeared. Nobody ever knew where it went. And it said she looked into this bottle and she could predict the future. She knew what was wrong with people before they even came to her house. She knew if you got there, she was able to tell you who you were and what you were there for. And at that time, she didn't just cure people, she cured animals, because if your pig got sick or your cow got sick or your horse got sick, it could be a dreadful thing. And there's a great story about a farmer who had a horse that was very ill, and he went to Biddy and he asked could she help. And the thing about Biddy was she believed in giving human beings a choice. She didn't just say you have to do this, she gave them an option. And she said there's two things you can do. I can cure your horse, but you have a small child, and your child will sneeze. And if your child sneezes 3 times without anybody saying God bless you, the child will die and the horse will live. Some choice that. Now, this child had a stepmother. Kate Corkery actually tells a story which is similar to this. And the stepmother in stories traditionally has always been the evil person. This was a wonderful woman who wanted the best. And so the father heard the child sneeze, said nothing. The child sneezed again, said nothing. The stepmother heard the child sneeze and said, God bless you. And the boy was saved but the horse was dead and the husband was really annoyed at losing his horse. But thanks to the choice that she made, the farm prospered and actually the family survived, whereas if the boy had died, there'd be no hope for marriage or farm. But I want to share with you a story about Biddy. I mean, they say she had at least 3 husbands. Some people say she had up to 6 husbands. And the bit I really liked about this story is when she was 70 and she was a widow, a 33-year-old man came asking for a cure, and she said she could cure him if he would marry her, and he did. Thought that was interesting. Anyway, so there was life in the old girl yet. But however, the story that I really like is this one about Gusty Mac. It's one that Eddie tells, and I credit him for the story. Mrs. Mac's husband, Gusty, took ill. People said it was a fever. He was unconscious. And at that time, neighbours would have noticed a whole flock of magpies on the roof of his thatch, picking away at the thatch. And finally, nobody could do anything for Gusty Mac. So Mrs. Mac decided she would go and seek help from Biddy early. She was a little scared of the reputation of this woman, but she thought she would go. So she had to get a horse and cart and make the long journey over to Kilbarron, which is near Feakle in County Clare, where Biddy lived. When she got there, Biddy came out to her and said, "Mrs. Mac, you're too late." She was amazed. How did she know her name? She said, "Your husband's dead." And the poor woman just collapsed then. She said, "No, come in, come in. It's not too late." She said, "When I say he's dead, he's actually been taken away by the good people, the fairies. What you see in the bed when you go home is actually a changeling. They have taken your husband away, but we're not too late to get him back if you do exactly as I tell you." So this is what she said. She said, "Mrs. Mac, you go home and you prepare everything for the wake," because again, I hope everybody knows that the Irish do funerals in style. There was a big wake in the past. There would have been snuff. There would have been liquor. There would have been tea and sandwiches, of course. Even now, people carry cakes and sandwiches. Not so much liquor these days. They had snuff in those days and pipes full of tobacco. Prepare for the wake. Get the priest. Order the coffin. And when the time comes, pick 4 of the strongest men in your parish to come. Open the coffin. In each corner of the coffin, put 4 black-handled knives with the points facing into the coffin, the handles to the edges of the coffin. Place the body on that, screw down the coffin, and get the men to carry it, but only as far as the crossroads, not as far as the graveyard. She said, but not one person, apart from the 4 men carrying the coffin, must put a hand to that coffin, or all will be lost. And if this works, when you come home, your husband will be fit and well in bed. And what will be in that coffin will be the brush that you use to sweep your hearth and sweep your floor. Wow, what a strange thing. Mrs. Mac hadn't really anything to lose, so she made her way home, and sure enough, when she got there, the house was full of mourners. There was what she thought was her husband stretched out in the bed, dead, the rosary laced between his clasped fingers. She ordered up the coffin. She went and got the 4 black-handled knives. She made sure the priest didn't see any of this because he would have totally disapproved. She had got 4 of the strongest men in the parish to carry this coffin, and when the time came, they put this body into the coffin, screwed down the lid, and the 4 men, these strong men, carried it out of the house and then hoisted it up on their shoulders as we do. We still walk a long way with a coffin on the shoulders. Mrs. Mac followed behind, of course, as chief mourner, but as they walked, the coffin got heavier and heavier. It was as if there was a ton weight, and when they approached the crossroads, these big strong men started to stumble and the coffin started to lurch. And Mrs. Mac did the only thing that any normal person would do. She reached out and she touched the coffin. And the minute she did that, it was as if the coffin was as light as a feather. And when they got to the crossroads, they set it down, they opened it up, and inside was indeed the body of Gusty Mac. Well, they buried that body, and when she came back to her own house, what was lying on the bed? Only the brush, just as Biddy had predicted. So that's just one story about a remarkable woman. You can read more about her. Eddie's written a book called In Search of Biddy Early, which I've had for over 30 years, I think it is now. And to me, she was a very interesting person. I'm interested in the fact that the bottle disappeared when she died. Nobody could find this bottle. She's buried in fecal. Her house fell into disrepair, and it's been recently, it was renovated, and they had gatherings of storytellers and singers, and folklorists would come there almost on a pilgrimage. But that's the story of Biddy Early, the wise woman of Clare, and I am sort of fascinated by her. And how many more of these wise women were there, or maybe still out there? I know recently a man who has many, many cures, and somebody I know really well took shingles, which is a horrible affliction, some of you maybe know, and we phoned up this man, but he didn't do it by herbal method, he does it by prayer. But like Biddy, this man and Biddy didn't take any money for their cures. Biddy was brought presents, often pochine, illicit liquor in those days. But this other man, he just asked people to say a prayer. So there isn't so much conflict between the Christian faith and this old religion, I think, or this old beliefs. So that's my story. I'm happy to talk a wee bit more about it.
Oh, sorry. Just going to spotlight us. I'm sort of chilled by that story with the coffin.
Well,
I mean, I love it. And I love its relation to your first story as well. It's very mysterious, this intuitive quality. It kind of takes it to another level with a healer. I mean, we often talk about healers working with their intuition.
But you know this business about the changelings? I mean, people in Ireland even yet will say, do you see your man there? He's away with the fairies. People actually believe the fairies would come. That's why they dressed little boys in petticoats. The fairies preferred male children, believe it or not. And there are many stories about fairies coming and taking away a human child. Vicky and I do a piece called A Cook of Wisdom, and we have a story in it about a stolen child. And there are many stories like that, and people really believe, that somebody's away with it. If you take it logically, I used to do a lot of talking about this. If somebody nowadays is in an accident and is rendered unconscious, people know to play music, say their favourite pop star, their favourite football player, because sometimes you think they can hear this and it can help them revive, And one of the first stories I ever told, wee Meg Barneyleg and the fairies, she was taken away by the fairies for a whole year and a day, and there's a lot of this year and a day stuff. So that belief's still very strong in Ireland. You'll hear people saying, oh, I don't know. Well, sometimes I think I don't know what happened to my lovely, charming child who turned into a hideous teenager, but she's come out of it now again. But that old belief was still there,
I suppose it's about our connection with the world, isn't it? Because it's sort of like letting go and go, well, they were away with the fairies. There's something we can't control, and there's nothing we can do. We have to let go, and maybe they'll come back, or maybe they won't.
That's right. And here, where I live, there's a very strong belief in the other world. I could take you down the road and show you fairy trees, which farmers will not cut down. We have a fairy hill called Tivera, and at one side there's a fairy tree, and nobody would want to cut that down. It would not be good. But even our belief now in herbal cures, I'm sitting here with my broken arms, which I use knit bone or comfrey. I'm using, herbal medicine on that as well as the painkillers. But I think that there shouldn't be a conflict. We can use both side by side and pick, if you like. It's like one of those pick and mix shops, You can believe in many things.
Absolutely, absolutely. Vicky.
Yeah, I think the thing that really interests me when we start delving into this is this concept of the belief. And it's interesting to me that the guy uses prayer. And sometimes, sometimes I think like there's maybe something in the plant, and sometimes it's the belief in the healer as well, and the fact that this will work. And maybe the two of them coming together is actually what really has the power. And so this idea of this wise woman, if you're going to be healing and you're going to be using it, it's only going to work if you fill that archetype. And so, do you know what I mean? If you step into that role, perhaps, because then you have the power behind it. That's, you said earlier, Xanthi, something about charms as well as the plant.
Yeah, I was talking about the Laknunga, which is an Old English collection of healing. I think I might have talked about it on the Goddess Lounge before, where you conjure the qualities of the plant poetically. So you would, the one I know is waybread plantain. So you, waybread, mother of plants, carts ran over you, brides wept over you, bulls stamped on you, you stayed strong. Now stay strong and wipe out the infection that, you know, floods the land. And you would hold that over a patient. And I always thought, actually, until this weekend, because I'm on a herbal medicine weekend, I always thought that that was about activating the parasympathetic nervous system of the patient, as if to say, look, this plant is really powerful. You will believe in it, and you'll go on a shamanic journey, and you'll go to the Hesperides and wherever, or Avalon, and you'll come back and you'll be healed. But I've been learning that there are plants that are adaptive. I mean, most plants are adaptive. So as they adapt to the soil and the environment, so they also adapt to the person that takes them, which is why you get plants with seemingly contradictory qualities. That might bring on a period and also stop a period, that might make you feel damp or might make you feel dry, depending on who you are. But it's all about, I suppose, your fairy interaction with the plant and how much you let it in and how much you let it work on you. I mean, that, I don't mean to say fairy interaction because it makes it sound like it's all psychological. It's not. It's more like you open up the passageways for it to work, but it's going to work anyway. It's adaptive. That's its nature. I think it was so typical of me in, maybe an Irish person who's more connected to the land, wouldn't think like that. But I was thinking such a human-centric view of that plant rather than the plant-centric, that it has the power. It will adapt to you. It's not all about, a dramatic cure. It's going to work. It's going to do like Mother Nature does. It's going to carry on doing its thing, adapting to your body, which is, someone like Biddy Early, obviously.
Yeah, but you have to believe, if you're going into it skeptical, this is all rubbish, no, I don't believe in this. You have to have a positive outlook. It's like me when I got really sick. It's very hard to keep positive, but positivity is a really important thing to bring you through. You have to sort of have belief and have some sort of faith, whether it's a religious faith that some people have or just faith in the possibility that everything will be well. It's so important. Your attitude of mind is important.
I think that's fantastic, because what you've said is there that it's about positivity. It's not necessarily about belief. It's about taking control of not being a victim, taking control of your own healing. But that usually happens in community. And that's what we're all here today, because it's not only is it Samhain, but it's the Day of the Dead. It's the veil between worlds. We're not just in community with each other. We're in community with the ancestors and the old deities and the new deities and the prayers. So we're running out of time, so I'm just going to end. Oh no, we're okay actually. I'm going to show this film of Hecate, because I think she's a great bringer together without, as I say, without necessarily being that present herself. And then we'll carry on that theme.
I've just been walking along the path, looking for a place to tell the Hecate story, and I thought I'd gather clues as to the identity of Hecate from the outside world, and this is the first thing that crosses my path. I am not kidding you. I know that there are adders here in Sussex, but this is the first time I've seen one. I know they like to come out and bask in the path on a sunny day, and it's a rare sunny day in October, so here's the first Hecate clue. I'm coming to some black bryony, these red berries, and the little black berries clustered around are the berries of the laurel. Who knew? And I really think that red and black are the colours of Samhain or the Day of the Dead or Halloween. Oh, wow, hang on.
Look here. Look at this. How auspicious is this? A Hecate dragonfly with a red body and black wings. Extraordinary. Oh, hello. Oh, it just nearly landed on my hand. Sorry. Oh my God. And here's another really strong clue, because these are the red rose hips of Rosa cana, dog rose, or also known as witch's briar. I'm going to tell the Hecate story here at the crossroads of 5 roads with blackthorn. Blackthorn's got many qualities. It's often thought of as very violent because its sticks can be used as cudgels and its sharp thorns can be used as weapons. But in actual fact, it is a wound healer, a vulnerary, astringent, antimicrobial. Its Latin name is Prunus spinosa, and one of its common names is Lady of Pearls, and I think it must be a black pearl like this blackthorn. And if Hecate is anything, she is a black pearl, a blue-black sloe. To the gods, Hecate was a mystery. To look into her eyes was like looking into a labyrinth. To the humans, she was simply a witch. But that was just because she was the only one brave enough to take all the ghosts that could cluster around her for 100 years to the light. Anyway, she just turned up on Mount Olympus. 2 firebrands in her hands, 2 black dogs at her heel, and she sat next to the hearth. The gods were feasting, talking about love affairs and wars, scoffing, drinking. But they were uneasy because as soon as she sat down, it's as if they weren't there. She just started humming. You see, the honey from their feast had put her in mind of bees. And she loved the vibration of that hum. It made the palace walls vibrate, and Zeus got a little bit insecure. He was supposed to be the king of the gods. What was she doing here? Just arriving unannounced? He raised his thunderbolt. Everybody say, "Hail the strong" to me. The gods were a bit uneasy. Demeter, who always wants peace and fertility, offered Hecate a pomegranate and some strawberries. Dionysus rubbed red wine on her lips. Hermes ran round and round and round, trying to fan the flames to get her attention. But Zeus raised his thunderbolt. Hecate, say, "Hail the strong, we'll serve you long." But by now, she was not just thinking about the she was thinking about the honeycombs of bees, all those repeating hexagons, and how the patterns of nature spiraled in pine cones and snowflakes and outer space. She hadn't ignored Zeus's command to say, "Hail the strong, will serve you long." She hadn't even noticed him. In a fit of rage, he raised the thunderbolt and directed it straight at her. She came to, pulled out her matching weapon, which was a strophalos. A strophalos is a sapphire surrounded by a golden ball attached to a leather rawhide thong. And when the priests or priestesses of Hecate whirled that thong, it started to make all the numbers of creation vibrate. There were said to be secret numbers written on the leather. And the Platonists believed that Hecate had given every living thing a pin code. And when she whirled her strophalos, all the pin codes of creation were activated and everything started to sing. And as she was the great creatrix, she activated the song in all the gods. And a great wind gusted through the palace and bashed off the roof, and the gods were levitated high into the sky, and they started to spin. Zeus became a rolling, rippling thunderclap. Demeter became a twisting spiral of wheat. Dionysus became one of Hecate's black dogs, and Hermes screeched, a great winged bird. When they finally landed down on Mount Olympus, they weren't sure who they were, because as they'd been screaming out there in outer space with ecstasy and song, it had felt like their mouths were Hecate's mouth. Her mouth was their mouth. She was them and they were her, and all was earth and sea and sky. Zeus said, "Hecate, sorry." Hecate? Nothing but a gust of wind, a scent of honey. She was gone. Who knew when or if she'd ever return?
Yeah, I wanted to tell that story then because I was so inspired by what you said, Liz, about positivity, because I think it's that vibration, you know, and you've got the sort of an archetype like Hecate, she is mainly vibration, and it's getting into that zone, isn't it, of vibration that, and when she does it, it communicates with everybody else. And we're back with that ring of women, come or go ye before, come or go ye, you know. And I just, you know, there's one line, I think it's kilted cloaks and fleeing hair and 3 times 3. You know, it's this bundle of sticks that are so much stronger together, or the plait of herbs. And I just think that's so, you know, it's the goddess lounge, it's the herbal goddess lounge, and it's about healing, and that's how we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, any thoughts, you two, before we open up to the floor? I mean, I think I did actually, I mean, that adder, I just think it's so auspicious because
weird that you came upon that.
Honestly, I've so wanted to see a snake, and everybody said careful because the dogs. I love snakes, you know, because they, you know, for all the reasons, eternal circle, but mainly they shed a skin, and that's what we're doing at this time of year. We're shedding a skin, going into winter, letting go of the dead while honouring them, and knowing that the snake venom and snake skins and everything is so healing. The grief feels like a poison, but it's healing, and we're going through. So that's really what we're doing, shedding a skin. Yeah. So that seemed very, very strange that it appeared on the path there.
That's just pulled me back slightly, Xanthi, to Tam Lin, because when I arrived at it's actually called the Giant's Ring, there was a black and red dog lead left in front of it that looked like a snake for a moment.
Goodness.
In the film, if you see it. But it made me come back to thinking about that, and thinking about Tam Lin and his moment where she pulls into the earth and he becomes a wolf and a bear and a lion and then a naked man, and these are the skins that he moves through each of his moments of expression of the fight or whatever, and that what's left is that, when I picture it, is him lying on the earth in the fetal position as this naked man that she then takes home. And I think at this time of year, when we go inward, as we go through each of those levels of our own fighting or bears or whatever it is that's there, that's what we're looking to connect with, that inner vulnerability, that inner space. It just felt
the essence. Yeah,
that's lovely. From a werewolf to a Labrador.
You know, I've been trying to think, and maybe somebody on here tonight, years and years ago, it was a fantastic story about a woman who was so worried about her husband because he would go out, and when he came back, he was so different. Just a fantastic story, which just pulls you in, and wasn't until the end you realise that she was a werewolf, and she was worried because he turned into a human, you know. It's a brilliant story. I will try and track it.
Oh, yeah.
Saw the theme of this. I thought, oh, if I could get my hands on that story, but I just didn't have time with all these ghost stories this week. But it's a fantastic. I think it's a written story, but it's brilliant, you know, because all the way through you're assuming this poor woman, her husband turns into a werewolf every night, but the problem is, he's a werewolf and he turns into a human being. She doesn't like that at all.
I love that. That's a fabulous twist.
Really good story.
Well, if you find it, I can put the link in with the email I'll send out. And actually, Vicky, I have noticed that black and red lead. So if anybody wants to watch your film again, you can actually see it in the background. That snaky black and red dog's lead, very appropriate for Hecate and Labradors.
You know, I love black German Shepherd dogs. Black Labradors are all right, but nothing beats a jet black German Shepherd dog, I have to tell you.
I don't really know them, but I love to end the night on dogs. We know we love dogs. So everybody, this is going to be the formal end of it. Happy Samhain and happy shedding of skins and new beginnings into winter. Let's open up the floor for anybody that wants to stay.
Let's look at ourselves and see who we've got in front of us. Would that be all right?
Yes, if anybody's, yeah. Put gallery on and let's unmute.
I'd like to see the gallery.
I'm just looking to, unmute. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Oh, have I just muted everybody? Can you still hear me? Yeah, great. Yeah. So if anyone's kitchen, anybody's inspired, anybody's got stories about healing women or Samhain or dogs or anything. I told you, Liz. I said that they won't speak at the end, but they will
speak.
So who's going to win the bet? Come on.
Marilyn will speak, I'm sure, and Erin is bound to speak. I'd love to hear them more speak. Yes, there's Anne Stewart, who got up very early in Australia. You unmute yourself, Anne. You have to unmute, though. No, you can unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't unmute. Thank you so much. Wow, 1,000 things are running through my head. First of all, when you and Daisy introduced me to Bridget and the Keening songs. And then I wonder how stories are transplanted, like all the way to Australia, and the trees are different and everything, but the mythology still sticks. And so many Irish women came to Australia, and their traditions and things sort of came across. But last night I watched this amazing new documentary called Journey Home, and it's about David Gulpilil, and he was the first Indigenous dancer storyteller, and you might know Storm Boy or Walkabout, all these things. And to watch this completely different culture and the way the women keened at the end, throwing themselves to the ground, and the passion and the urgency, it just sort of has me so interested in the crossovers. And I know you've been to Australia a few times, Liz, but just I love the traditions. That's why I get up early in the morning. But it's just to wonder how they cross over. And I actually tell a story of Tamlin that I transplanted to Australia and made it kind of Australian. So thank you, everybody. Thank you. That's all.
I'd love to hear about those keening traditions in Australia.
We deal with that in A Cook of Wisdom, the piece that Anne Harper, who's on, and Vicky and I do together. It's Women's Stories Reimagined. We talk about the power of the keening women who cried to bring the sadness out in the mourners. You see it in Middle Eastern culture, the women crying and calling. And nowadays it's almost unfashionable to cry, though I cry at the drop of a hat. And so these keeners had a very important role in releasing the spirit, they say, through their almost guttural primeval sounds. It's terrific.
Yeah. Well, Kate Corkery said some great stuff in the Bridget Goddess Lounge, but there's so much more to uncover. I know Katrina Faber, I don't know if she's still here, is working a lot with lament, but more of that another time, I think. I can see that Marilyn McPhee and one other has raised their hands. So, yeah, speak up, Marilyn. What does that mean? Speak up, Marilyn.
We can't unmute, just so you know.
You can't unmute.
Marilyn to unmute.
There's a block.
Oh, that's
how weird, because it's saying.
There, you're okay now, Marilyn. She's unmuted.
Yeah. I wanted to show you a witch ball. And it does the same sort of thing as the blue bottles, that you hang it in the entryway, and evil spirits enter in there. It's got filaments inside, and they are trapped by that, and so will not come into your dwelling. They were popular in the eastern United States, and I think some places in Europe as well. But anyway, I thought I'd show you that.
Yes, what to know.
It's magical. What's inside it? I can't quite see.
It's blown glass, and a lot of times when they blow glass, they want to make sure that it's just it's just clear inside, but this leaves the filaments, the glass filaments inside, and that is what is supposed to trap the evil spirits.
Oh, so it's like a sort of Native American dream catcher sort of thing. But
yeah, although I not from that tradition at all.
no, of course not. No. I'm just looking on the chat. Thank you. That's just, I've never seen the like. Somebody else had their hand raised, but I can't see them now. It said somebody else. Well, while people are
Hello, it's Farzaneh. I'm calling from Cape Town. And it's very interesting to hear these lovely stories that you're telling tonight, because we're in springtime. Mm-hmm. But we're in this colonial idea of Halloween and Samhain. So it's a very disconcerting time in the Southern Hemisphere because you're in spring.
Yes.
But we just had I was the one who created the Halloween parade for all the children, which they of course love. And what's so interesting is that people are so worried about the veil between worlds. But maybe one day it will be that we will start having the springtime celebrations and we'll come to the harvest in the fall. Mm-hmm. But until then, we're upside down.
Sure.
Yeah,
I always think it's very comforting to think about the ancestors. How often am I going through my life and say to my dead mother, come on, give me a hand here, please, you know. I always think I tell a story that a lot of people know, the hired girl, when the girl's father appears and the ghost of her father saves her. So I always love that connection with those who've gone before us.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because they're opposites, aren't they? So they do attract, you know, the spring and the autumn. They're very similar. And we talked, it seems to be that on every Goddess Lounge, ironically, we've talked about death less on this Goddess Lounge than we have on any other one. The other ones have all been about, you know, letting go of one season in order to get into the other. So sometimes the concentration on death was even stronger than the new one, you know, the new birth. So there is, you know, that I suppose it's like the herbs, the opposites. You know, there's the seed of the opposite in each one. But I can imagine as a colonial imposition, it's incredibly frustrating because it feels controlled. There's a nice comment in the chat here. There's a book called Seed Keeper. This is Erin, by Diane Wilson, and in it she states, in the beginning, the people and the plants had an agreement. The people would sing to the plants and take care of them, and the plants communicated their healing properties. That's wonderful. That's exactly it. One triggering the other. And I just want to read this comment out from Narissa, which I think is wonderful. I once met a homeopath on a train and got talking. She said the remedy she'd decided on would take effect before the patient had even received it through the post, let alone taken it. And I've sometimes dreamt the name of the remedy I'd been prescribed well before I had been given the name of it.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting. Any other comments?
If you can't unmute, and Erin's there. She needs to unmute though. She says she can't unmute. Ask her to unmute.
I've got some hands up. I've got Vicky. Can you not? You've got your hand up as well.
That's Erin now. If we ask to unmute, they can unmute. Erin?
Yeah, I just got a message saying host will let you unmute, so it was blocked.
If anybody wants that, just give me a shout and we'll do that.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to just share, that book was written by a woman who studied with, I believe, Lakota and Dakota people in the United States. And she is of that lineage. And the book isn't about herbalism, but she weaves it in and out and talks about how, since as far back as she can remember, her ancestors, when they were shipped off the reservations, they put the seeds to the plants inside their clothes and saved the seeds so that they wouldn't lose the heritage of what they were being asked to do. In the lineage that I studied under, we were always told before you collect a plant, and this is very different than when you go to a grocery store, before you collect a plant, you ask the eldest plant if it's okay to gather anything from that plant. And then you say, which plant can I gather it from? And that gives you a different relationship with the plant. So you're not just going, oh, this plant cures this, I'm going to go out and get some of this. And so told me if I put it in a cup and boil some water, you know, it's a whole way of living. And the same with animals. You don't just kill a deer. You ask the forest which deer is okay. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. I think it goes with the stories I heard today. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's wonderful.
So we can ask you to unmute if anybody wants to make a comment, just indicate and we'll unmute you. Ask you to unmute.
I think somebody was saying today that trees with the mycelium, was it you, Vicky, saying the mycelium network?
Mm.
So I was listening to a gardening show that was about trees the other day, and it was talking about the mycelium network and how that when the connection is made, it's not made with every tree, and the tree almost has to give permission. So I just thought that was a really, really interesting thing, that like these connections are made and then the tree says yes or no, makes a choice as to whether it wants to, doesn't say yes or no, but it either opens up to it or it doesn't. And I like the side, well, I just think there's so much more there that we haven't been aware of scientifically, although maybe we have been aware of at a deeper level, and we've forgotten all that knowledge, but maybe it was all there to start with, you know, and we need to reconnect with it as much as possible.
Erin, you had a question you forgot to ask?
Yes, so that's a Lakota Native American tradition, and I'm just wondering if in Ireland and the UK, if you have any traditions that are still alive, like what I just stated about asking the plant for permission when gathering herbs, and any maybe stories around that.
No, I know. My mother would always, when she was going to take cutting, my mother was a demon. You'd take her to these National Trust open gardens. I would say, Mummy, you can't be taking cuttings here. But she would actually ask the plant, is it okay to take a bit? The plant didn't speak back to her, but she at least asked permission before she stole bits of plants. Anyway.
I know that Kate Daisy Grant, who's been on the Goddess Lounge a couple of times, the singer who has done that fantastic album Songs for the Trees, she always asks permission. She waits not just for, you know, blossoms and roots and whatever. She goes into a grove and she waits for the tree. You know, she finds the tree and then she starts to sort of download what the tree's got to offer and take that from the song. But she says she really opens herself to the trees. It sounds, if you think of them like humans, it would be really normal. It'd be how you treat a human. So, or you'd hope it would. I think I'm going to end it there, unless anybody's burning, because it's 21:30. Unless anybody's feeling there's anything they really want to say, but just leave the floor open for a second or two.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks to everyone for coming.
Thank you. Honestly, that's
Nice to see you, Anne. Hope to go to Oz for Christmas.
What do you say, Liz?
I hope I can go to Australia for Christmas. I hope I'm saying to Anne.
Yes.
It's what got me through 8 weeks away from home with my injury.
Yeah. Well, I hope you go from strength to strength.
Thank you.
And all your amazing jet-setting work, even though it's very grounded, you're all over the place and doing all your great stuff. And thank you for your gorgeous films and everybody for being here. And happy Samhain and Day of the Dead and Halloween and Los Angelitos and All Souls, and much love. And I will be sending a recording to everybody that's bought a ticket, and it's usually available, I say 2 weeks, but I don't tend to take it down till the next Goddess Lounge, usually because I don't get round to it. So
thank you, Xanthe, for asking us to take part.
that was a joy. Thank you.
Been lovely.
Been lovely to see everybody.
Nice to see lots of good friends. Bye, Lamore.
And thank you for coming.